Hi there. It's good to talk with you this evening, so I'm glad we could get started. And tonight we're going to have our call about Agni. So Agni is our digestive fire. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you so that we know exactly what we're doing. And I will just bring it up right now. And you should be able to see my screen right now. Let's go from the beginning. There we go. So this is our digestive fire. So let's talk a little bit about Agni. So our digestive fire is really the body's internal fire. So it's our metabolism, but in Ayurveda we call it Agni. And you and I have talked many times about Agni. It's one of my favorite topics, and we always talk about if we don't have a strong digestive fire, we're not going to have good health. So when our Agni functions properly, whatever we've eaten gets digested and then absorbed by the body. So that's great. The body uses what it needs, and then what it does is it eliminates the rest as waste, and we know that. However, when our doshas are imbalanced, and that could be due to all kinds of reasons, things like lifestyle, diet, negative emotions, having just gone through Christmas, New Year's parties coming up, traveling, which is what I've been doing for the last week, then what happens is our Agni or our digestive fire becomes weakened or disturbed, and it can't function properly. So most disease and imbalance is caused by malfunctioning Agni. So it's really important then to know what it is and how it's supposed to work. So let's visualize Agni as a little flame. In fact, many of you I've talked to, and sort of I want you to imagine that in your belly there's a fire right behind your belly button. And in the morning when you wake up, your Agni is just a little tiny flame. And the goal then is to help Agni grow bigger. So if we wake up hungry, we want to give Agni just a little something warm to work on, because Agni is not ready for a heavy breakfast. It's too little. That flame, that fire, our metabolism is not robust enough to be able to handle lots of food. So a big meal at this time would actually smother that Agni and put it right out, put that flame right out. So let's think of a small warming breakfast as kindling. So we use kindling, don't we, to make a small fire grow bigger or to get a fire started. But if we were to put a great big log on a little tiny flame, and let's call that great big log bacon, eggs, hash browns, orange juice, and pancakes, and you put that on a little tiny fire, then what happens? Well, that fire goes out, doesn't it? So if we're hungry, we should have a small breakfast, which then is manageable for Agni to digest, so then it can grow. So let's look at what happens as Agni starts growing. By 10 o'clock, when our Pitta energy kicks in, we might feel a little bit snacky. And that's because Pitta, which is that sort of robust digestion. That's when Pitta and Agni are getting stronger, which then makes us hungry. So the goal then is to have a nice raging metabolism, or that Agni, by noon. And at noon, we should eat our biggest meal of the day. And I've told all of you that, especially if you're looking at weight loss, you have to have your biggest meal of the day at lunchtime. And that's so Agni has the rest of the day to digest it. Because Agni is strongest at this time, then it can handle all kinds of food, all kinds of work. But then as the afternoon goes on, Agni is working hard on digesting our big lunch, and at the same time the sun is getting lower in the sky. Now, I know we don't pay attention too much to the sun, but the sun has an effect on us. So at midday, our Agni is like a small sun inside us. So it's at its strongest. In the midday, the sun is at the strongest. But then as it wanes throughout the day, it gets weaker and weaker, just like our digestive fire. So by dinner time, Agni does not have the power that it had at noontime. And this is why Ayurveda says to eat a smaller dinner than you do your lunch or breakfast. Once the sun goes down, then the normal function of the body reduces. So Agni kind of slows down again, and then sort of builds up again the next day, and we go through the cycle again. And this is where our Western schedules go really wrong. So I'm speaking to you, and I know you're going to resonate with this because I've talked to each one of you. So how many of us, or how many of you skip breakfast, first and foremost, or have a cold raw smoothie, or yogurt with fruit? So fire can't grow if we're putting all this cold, heavy, wet stuff on it. Imagine putting green wood on fire. It's wet, it's damp. That fire is just going to sputter and go out. And then what do we do in our Western schedules? Well, then we eat a light lunch like a salad. But Agni, your metabolism, actually needs substantial fuel to get us through the rest of the day. And a small salad just won't cut it. It's just not enough fuel for you. And then what else do we do in our schedule? Well, because lunch was tiny, all we had was a salad and it wasn't enough to see us throughout the day, then we're starving by the time we get home. So what do? We grab something as we're cooking dinner. So now we're eating more than we normally would. And then we inhale a big dinner. Then we're so tired we go to sleep right afterwards. And that's when our digestive fire is at its lowest and we have our biggest meal of the day. So what's the problem there? Well, with a large meal at night and a shrinking Agni at night, then that big dinner just sits in our gut. It goes undigested until Agni has enough energy to work on it again the next day. So what do we tend to do? Most people will eat breakfast on top of that undigested food, which then makes it twice as hard for that little tiny puny fire, remember, first thing in the morning to work. So what happens over time? Well, this creates an old food pile that never gets processed. With all that undigested food, we're quickly on the road to weight gain and armor. And many of you, I've talked about armor, and armor just means toxins, and we'll talk more a little about toxins later. So, but you can change all this, you really can. So let me give you a real life example. At our jobs, we complete the bulk of our work during the day, don't I? But imagine if you came home at night to find even more work to do than you had to do all day at work. You would be like, forget this, and we would quit before we even started. It's just too much to accomplish in such a short amount of time. So Agni has the same qualities. It just feels the same way about having to digest too much food that later in the day. It just can't do it. However, what we can do in the evening is we can do light tasks. We could do dishes, laundry, light reading. We could respond to some personal emails. These light tasks for us is what a light dinner is to Agni. So it's totally doable. It's nothing too heavy. So give Agni all the work to do at noon. Have your biggest meal of the day at noon. And then give Agni a little bit to work on in the evening, but not a lot, especially if you want to be healthy. So let's look at Agni's strength. So what is Agni's strength? Well, it depends. And many of you get frustrated with me because you ask me a question. It's like, well, it depends. Depends on the time of year, depends on the season, the time of day, and it depends upon your dosha. Well, your metabolism depends too. So at this time, you're probably thinking, what about my Agni? How is my Agni? What's my Agni? Well, as I've just said, your Agni is as unique as you, and that's why it depends. So let's look at the different doshas and look at their Agni and how it works. So Vatas have variable Agni. And that's because of Vata's unpredictability. So Vatas tend to be irregular eaters with a regular Agni. Sometimes they eat a lot, and sometimes they can eat like a bird. So Vatas tend to be snacky eaters. They can eat tiny meals all day and all night. So they're the grazers. But the problem with this is this irregularity then causes them to be irregular with their digestive system too. So they're irregular with their stools. They stop and start their digestion, and restarting that digestion, having those little snacks throughout the day, constantly causes bloating and constipation. If vatas are over hungry, they'll get lightheaded, they'll get moody, they'll get weak, and they'll feel like they're going to pass out. So with vatas, they have to train their Agni to expect 3 to 4 sort of good whole meals a day and not graze, which is what they're tempted to do. Now, pittas, and if you have a lot of pitta in you, you know this, you have a strong Agni. Actually, you have the strongest Agni because your fire element, which is very closely related to pitta, is most dominant in you. So you can eat meat and tin cans and feel just fine. But you pittas know this, you are almost always hungry and can digest food really well. Now, normally, because you're so physically active, then you can eat large quantities of food to keep you satisfied. But eating that way over a lifetime can make pittas gain weight. So if pittas are not fed, watch out. And I often say, do not get between pitta and his food. That phrase, hangry, where you get angry and you get hungry, relates to pittas. So they'll get fierce, and if you have no food handy, throw a piece of chocolate at a pitta and then run. And then let's look about kaphas. So kaphas tend to have weak Agni. They have a slow metabolism. They have sluggish cold qualities, so their Agni is low and consistently low. They rarely say they're starving. And if they are, it's because they've probably not eaten in a day and a half. They can go a long time without eating and still feel content in their mind, and they still feel great in their bodies. They're very economical that way. But make no mistake, kaphas do love to eat, so they rarely go without eating. They love food. They love to experience. They love to savor food. But unfortunately, kaphas just don't need a lot of it. They have to be really mindful of building up toxins, since they are the dosha that builds. Kaphas build tissue really, really easily. They collect too. So they collect water, so they can often put on weight very, very easily. So really with kaphas, their portions should be much, much smaller because they don't need much to feel full. And if a kapha's not fed, well, that's fine. They can wait. They can still remain happy, although kaphas probably won't wait. So the bottom line is we need to keep our Agni burning strongly to digest our food. All the old food turns into those toxins. So what's the problem with toxins? Well, toxins clog channels, all the channels of the body. Or they can cause flow to go in the wrong direction. Toxins can wrap themselves around the doshas and might cause the doshas to flow in the wrong direction so that they go in places they shouldn't. And when that happens, well, we get sick. So when toxins collect, it's like old food in the kitchen drain, you know. It's not great. It clogs everything up and it causes things to flow very, very slowly. So that's just what happens. Just imagine a kitchen sink and imagine it just sort of blocked up, and you throw everything into that kitchen sink and it drains very, very slowly and the gunk builds up over time. Imagine if we did that for several months. Can you imagine that gunk? So what we have to do is we have to get rid of that gunk, clear it away, and then clear out all those toxins. So that brings us to toxins and ama. So what is ama and what are toxins? Well, toxins are created by old food, just as I said, but not just solely food. So as with all things in Ayurveda, your emotions, your stresses, your lifestyle, and your environment are all connected, and they all play a huge role in how we digest our food. So Digestion, our metabolism, our Agni, needs to be really strong because it's how we digest our food. So we could have the best food in the world. You could have the best diet with the right foods for the right seasons, but if you cannot digest that food properly because your Agni, your metabolism is too sluggish, then you're going to have problems. So it's not just the quality of the food you're having, it's got to be how good is your Agni as well. So digestion is food. Yes, we do digest our food. But in Ayurveda, we say that nutrition is anything that we take in through our five senses. So taste being only one of those five senses. So when our doshas are imbalanced due to our lifestyle or due to our diet or because we had too much to drink over Christmas or too many cookies, or even negative emotions that may have come up over the holiday season, then your Agni's function, its ability to digest, becomes weakened or disturbed. And then what happens is that leaves undigested food behind. This undigested food turns into ama, just means digestive toxins. It's a toxic, sticky, cloudy, it's a smelly substance. And it can spread from the GI tract to other parts of the body too. And from there, once it's spread, it can lodge itself into sort of crevices in the body, and it causes clogs in channels, it causes clogs in blood vessels. Cholesterol is a good example of ama, and even cell membranes. So it sounds complicated, doesn't it? And difficult to get ama, but it's really kind of easy if we're not paying attention. How many times have we eaten on the go while working, during an intense conversation or an argument, or while really nervous? How many times have we gone back for seconds, even though we were full? How many times have we had dessert just lately over Christmas, knowing that we're not hungry, but it just tastes good? And how often have we had an ice-cold fizzy beverage with our meal? All of these eating practices can cause ama. So how do we get ama? Well, here's how. Overeating is a big one. We're probably all a little bit guilty of that over the holiday season. Cold or raw foods. And yep, yogurt falls into this category. I was with my in-laws just today, and my sister-in-law, who's having digestive problems right now, turned around and said, oh, I'm just going to eat yogurt today. You know, you can't tell sisters-in-laws or family members anything because they think you know nothing. So I didn't say anything, but I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that's the worst thing you can do for your digestion. Eating before your previous food is digested. If you're not hungry, don't eat. Hunger is one of the best ways to determine if your Agni is functioning problem. So rule of thumb, if you're not hungry, don't eat. Nothing terrible is going to happen to you if you skip food for a day. You can fast, you can drink ginger tea, and that's going to help catch that Agni up because ginger tea promotes digestion. And then when your Agni is ready for more food, then you'll feel hungry again. So this is your body's way of saying your digestion is great, you're hungry, you're ready for the next meal. Now, also, I do know other people who have gone the other way. You know, if we don't eat when Agni says, hey, I'm hungry, and we ignore those hunger signs or we don't eat, then what happens to your Agni is it gets smaller and smaller because it's not being used. So then it cannot digest food. So you set up this sort of vicious cycle there. If we skip breakfast when we're hungry, which a lot of people do, they ignore that, then we don't give anything for that Agni to sort of grow, because that light breakfast is like kindling. So if we don't use any kind of kindling, we don't have any breakfast, then once again, that fire is going to go out, just like if we didn't kindle a fire, it would. So ignoring indigestion is another cause of ama. So if you have any symptoms of poor digestion, that's bloating, constipation, heartburn, and you eat anyway, that's going to cause ama. This is your body's way of saying, hey, things are not right. Let's just stop. We don't have the robustness. We don't have the power to digest food, because these are all signs and symptoms of poor digestion. If you eat uncooked food, Now, I've come across a lot of people who like raw foods. And for some of you, especially if you're pitters, you can handle raw foods in the summertime. This time of year in the winter, there is no reason any of us should be having raw foods. And I've heard, well, I miss the crunchiness of salads. But raw foods are actually going to create digestive toxins, especially this time of year. So that's uncooked or undercooked foods. So having your beef very rare or sushi this time of year is not a good thing for you. Sleeping after meals. Yeah, if you had a big Christmas dinner and then you hit the couch and didn't move, then you're going to feel really, really sluggish. And then you think, oh, I feel terrible. I feel sluggish. I haven't got any energies. I need something to pick me up. Let's have some coffee. The body starts craving sweets because it's looking for energy. Then you have more sugar. Then you have another crash. And then you end up going to bed. You wake up feeling sluggish. So instead of going for a brisk walk, you're just hanging around the house. You see how it sets it all up. So no sleeping after meals. Wait at least 3 hours after eating before hitting the sack. And that's why it's important to have your evening meal a good 3 hours before bedtime. Exercising after meals. Your body needs all its digestive strength to digest the meal that you've just eaten. If you've just had a meal and then you go hit the treadmill, then it cannot digest that food properly. So wait at least a couple of hours. I mean, you can go for a walk after a meal, that's fine. But I'm talking about, hitting the treadmill or going for a run or going for a bicycle ride, not just going for a walk. If you drink a lot of water during or immediately after meals, will actually dilute those digestive enzymes. So you're going to end up not being able to digest your food properly, and that's going to build digestive toxins. Ice cold drinks. It's a big one. I talk to everybody about this. It's quite controversial. A lot of people don't like it, and especially in this culture, you can go to any restaurant and you're going to get ice water before anything else. And even when you ask for water with no ice, you invariably get ice in it. So ice cold drinks will slow down those digestive enzymes. They cannot work with ice cold drinks. Carbonated drinks do the same thing. And eating when there's emotional unrest. So that's stress, anxiety, grief, fear. If you're having an argument with somebody and you're still shoveling it in, you cannot digest that food properly. And it's hard. I know we don't tend to recognize that there is an emotional component to our gut, but imagine you're really nervous. You have to give a presentation. You can feel that in your belly, can't you? You can feel that in your stomach. That butterfly, those butterflies is actually your nervous system. So you couldn't eat at that time. You'd feel like throwing up. So there is a direct relationship. Do not eat if you're arguing. You're best off just not bothering with a meal at that time. And then multitasking and eating. This is such a tough one. We all multitask. We sit on our computer at lunchtime. We'll sit and watch TV and eat. This is multitasking. And when we're multitasking, we're not paying attention to the qualities of our food. We're not enjoying it. 9 times out of 10, we just keep shoveling it in until it's all gone. We're not even aware of how much we've had to eat because we're too busy watching TV. And that takes our priority. So I'm going to encourage you, especially as we're coming into a new year and you're thinking about new ways of doing things, is to just sit with your bowl of food and just enjoy it. Enjoy the sight, the smell, the taste. Enjoy the preparation of it. And you'll find your digestion will be that much better because of it. So that's how we can get AMA. So how do you know if you have AMA? So what are those symptoms? Well, check your tongue. I showed you the picture of the tongue just now that has that white coating. That was an extreme example just to get your attention. Most of us don't have that, but you might have a white coating. So if you do at all, that's AMA. If you have any kind of bad breath, that's AMA. If your energy level is low, sluggish, sleepy, or weak, then that's armor too. If you tend to feel foggy or cloudy in the mind, or feeling any kind of blockage in the body, sort of some kind of congestion, if you've got a cough right now, or if you've got sinus problems right now, or your joints are aching or constipated, these are all blockages, or you've got low back pain or sciatica, again, these are blockages, then that's often caused by armor. If you're just not hungry anymore, you know, your body's pretty good at giving you the signals of what it needs. We just don't pay any attention anymore. So if your body's sort of say, if you're just not hungry anymore, this is your body's way of saying, hey, we can't shovel more food in us because we can't even digest what we have got right now. So if you're not hungry, you have no appetite, or you have no taste for food. I've had many clients turn around to me and say, you know, I just can't even taste the food anymore. It doesn't have any particular taste. Again, that's your body's way of saying, hey, no more right now. If you feel tired or sluggish after meals, this is a big one. You have something to eat and then you slump, or you feel nauseous after meals, definitely a sign of armor. If you feel generally unmotivated and pretty lethargic, then that's often a sign of armor, digestive toxins as well. And any kind of unexplained aches, if you wake up one day and your joints are achy, if you've got joint pains, if you just feel fatigued for a few days, often this is signs of armor. So you will be able to detect armor if you pay attention to these subtle signs sometimes. So if you're feeling off in any way, and that's often what people will say to me, is I just don't feel myself anymore. I'm just not sure what's right, but I know something's not right. So if you're feeling off, check your tongue, because armor shows up on our tongue first. And if your tongue is coated white, then that's a sign you have armor. So are you all dashing to the mirror right now to have a look to see if you have armor? Now, if the tongue has a white coating, which can be scraped off, so then the tongue turns pink, that's not armor. But if the tongue has still got a white coating, even after you've scraped it off, then that is armor. So armor needs to be addressed long before a person can fully heal. So we can't, if there's signs and symptoms of armor, then there is no point in doing anything until we cleanse that first. So rather than being afraid of armor and saying, oh my gosh, I think I might have it, you know, let's thank it, because it's not showing up because it's bad or it's evil. It's showing up because it shows that we have some work to do on ourselves. And that's a great way to think about it. Sort of say, okay, I've got armor, I see it, and understand that something is off balance. And now I can fix it. Now I can do something about it. This is just my body's way of communicating to me and saying, hey, time to take stock, time to change things a little bit. So you checked your tongue and oh my gosh, now you've got armor. So now what? So first off, it's okay. All right, many of us do. And getting rid of armor can be quite simple or complex, depending on how long you've had the problem and how deep in the tissues your armor is. Sometimes it can be as simple as taking an afternoon or just skipping a meal to get rid of it. Or sometimes it can take months too, depending on how long it's been there, how many symptoms you have, whether you're in disease state, how far things have progressed for you. And sometimes it takes a full Ayurveda cleanse to move it, doesn't it, as well? So therefore, the treatment to clean out armor varies as well. So it depends. If you have lots of armor and it's stubborn to get rid of, then I'm probably working on you with cleansers and ways to get rid of it. If you're pretty light in your armor, then we've probably done a short reset, that's all. So let's look at our tongue. So our tongue is pretty diagnostic of our entire digestive system. And remember, our digestive system runs efficiently depending upon our Agni, our fire. So every morning when you wake up, check your tongue. Really, really important to do. If you've got a tongue scraper, and you should all be using your tongue scraper because you're working with me, then scrape it a few times to get sort of that nightly white coating off, and that's perfectly fine. And after that, look again. If it's pink, then you're doing great. If it's white, then there's probably armor. And you might find that after the holidays, that there is some armor showing up, but perhaps you had cleared up before the holidays. That just goes to show that the foods you ate, maybe the drinks you had, the extra sugar, it's just upsetting you. So, you know, we just need to sort of take stock. So besides a white coating, there are other things that we can look at on our tongue. So if there's redness, it can indicate that there's too much heat in the body or that our digestion is too hot. If you have heartburn, for example, you probably have a pretty red tongue or red spots on the tongue. If there's cracks on the tongue, that could mean dehydration. As simple as that, you need to drink more water, or you're not getting enough healthy oils in your diet. And if the tongue is shaky, that means you hold it out and sort of look at yourself in the mirror. Many of us have, our tongue will then shake, has tremors. That's a sign of anxiety or fear, too much movement, too much air quality in the body. If there's some teeth marks on the side, teeth indentations on the side of your tongue, scalloping, I call it, and many of you and I have talked about this, those indentations, it could be a sign of armor, which normally means that you can't necessarily get all the nutrition from your food. So even though you may be eating good food, you're not necessarily being able to get the nutrition from your food. So let's look at a Vata tongue. So if a Vata has coating, a white coating on their tongue, then the root cause often comes from their sort of dry and cold qualities. It may be constipation, they may be having raw and cold foods that have not digested. This shows up as white on the tongue. And the most common tongues for Vata are cracked tongues. Not everybody has a cracked tongue. Vatas think that everybody must be like them, but that's not so. A shaky tongue or teeth mark on the edges. This is often Vatas. And too much movement in the mind, so their mind's racing, or their body, they can't sit still, causes these kinds of tongues. And Vata tongues tend to be long and skinny. Let's look at Pitta tongues. They probably have the pinkiest tongues because they have the strongest digestion. So we often don't see armor in Pittas. But if they run too hot, which Pittas can do, then their tongue will look red or cracked, which is a clue then that they need to cool down. If they run extra hot, then their tongues may have more of a yellow coating on it. Again, it's a sign to cool down, slow down and cool down. So Pitta tongues tend to be pretty pointy and sharp on the edges because they can be a little sharp, can't they? And then lastly, our lovable Kaphas. Kaphas easily collect a white coating because of their sort of sticky, cloudy nature. Skipping meals, drinking or sipping ginger tea will help, as well as brothy soups with lots of black pepper, lots of garlic and other pungent spices. That's what's going to burn up that armor for them. It could take a full day, sometimes months, for their tongue to return back to pink, depending on how long the coating has been there. And Kapha tongues tend to be pretty broad, pretty wide, pretty round, and pretty broad. So let's talk about how to get rid of armor. Well, first thing, don't eat. If you are not hungry, don't eat. We live in a culture where we're so afraid of being hungry. And we tend to think that if we're hungry, oh my gosh, we must be starving. But if you are not hungry, it's important for you to skip meals. Just don't eat. I mean, you can drink teas and things like that, but don't eat until you do feel hungry. Then that's a sign from your body that your digestion's much better. Drink warm water. You all know this by now because I preach this until you're probably sick of it. You must drink warm water. Adding lime is really nice for Vatas. Lemon too, but lime's really nice. First thing in the morning. So we should all be drinking warm water with either lemon or lime in the morning. And then sip ginger tea. And the reason we use ginger, because ginger kindles that digestive fire. Now, if you already have overactive digestive fire, perhaps you have heartburn, you've got acid reflux, you've got ulcers, then ginger might be, you don't need to kindle your digestive fire anymore. But for the rest of us, what ginger does is it just builds that digestive fire. And that's what we want. We want to kindle it. Another great tea is that Ayurveda super tea that you all have access to. That's that CCF tea, cumin, coriander, and fennel tea. This tea is wonderful. It's a gentle detoxifying tea. And what it does is it kindles that digestive fire, just like the ginger tea. This is really nice for pittas too. It has fennel in it, so it cools the heat, but still kindles that digestive fire, that Agni, which is what we want. So use a lot of digestive spices like ginger and black pepper. Go to town. If you don't have any sort of heartburn, this is a great thing to use for you. It's always nice to go back to the good old favorite khichdi. This is the most easily digestible food for you. So anytime that you have Ama type symptoms, hey, just take a couple of days or just take a couple of meals and have sort of khichdi meals, because your Agni does not have to be very strong for you to be able to digest khichdi. So that's why it's so great. So do a mini at-home khichdi cleanse. And then if that has happened, then definitely let me or Rebecca know that this is what you're seeing. We don't know everything about you, even though most of us, we're talking to you either once a week or every couple of weeks or once a month. But if this is happening, then we need to know that, and we need to sort of take care of it. Because as I said, there's no point in eating good foods for you if you're not able to digest those foods. So the best thing we can do when our tongue is white is drink hot water that has been boiled. So you boil hot water fresh, excuse me, I have a frog in my throat, and then cool it enough to be able to sip. And that's what's going to be really, really nice. So heat it up first and then cool it. And I'm just drinking some right now. And then drink that throughout the day, sip that throughout the day. So we have to let our body catch up to the food we put in it. And the only way it can do this is if we don't give it any more food. So not hungry, don't eat. And I don't mean a crazy fast for days and days. Going into starvation mode doesn't help either. I mean, sip ginger or herbal teas. Ginger tea is best, as I said, because it sort of increases that digestive fire. So drink the ginger tea for a few hours, and that should let your Agni catch up for you. And if you try it, I think you'll find it fun to see how it goes. And then when you're really hungry again, look at your tongue. It'll be nice and pink. So don't take my word for it. Go ahead and try it. So then what do you do when you no longer have Ama? Or how do you know, rather, not what do you do? How do you know when you no longer have Ama? Well, first and foremost, your tongue is pink. So look at the difference here. So it's a Vata tongue. See all those cracks on that tongue? Has a white coating on it before, so definitely Ama here. And look at it after. Just a couple of days of sipping ginger tea and allowing that Agni to get strong again. So first off, your tongue is pink and you have energy, you have renewed energy. This means your digestive system is working really well. You can wake up easily, you're not waking up sluggish, you're waking up around sunrise, maybe this time of year, a little bit later, and you're hungry for meals. And not only are you have a good appetite and you're hungry for meals, but you don't feel heavy or tired after eating. Your mind is clear, you feel optimistic, and you feel happy. Your mood is upbeat. I'm not saying you have to be deliriously blissful, but you should feel upbeat, you should feel positive, you should feel pretty good about life. So I want you to remember that, and we'll sort of finish this phone call on this, that there's no good or bad foods, all right? Food is just food. So remove the attachment to whether a food is a bad food or a good food. It does depend on who's eating it. It depends on the state of their digestive fire, their Agni. It depends on how they prepare it. That's why we spend a lot of time talking about cooking, and how they eat it. So remember, no multitasking, and when they eat it too. So remember, the biggest meal of the day for your Agni should be at lunchtime. You may have got out of balance with that over the holidays and having bigger meals in the evening, and you're probably not feeling so great. In fact, I have had so many people tell me, Kerry, you've ruined me for everything. Every time I have anything like pizza or one too many glasses of wine, I really, really feel it, whereas I never used to before. I'm not so sure I like this. Well, this just means you become more sensitive to your body, and your body is now being able to tell you through its Agni, you know, hey, this is working or that's not working, which is wonderful. That's perfect. So terrific. I feel wonderful that we could spend this time tonight here. I know it's busy tonight, you know, it's that sort of week between Christmas and New Year's. Everybody's incredibly busy. And stay tuned for next month, where we'll have some we'll look at some great stuff too in January as well. So good night, take care.